those of us that are honest in the fact that we're not really chasing work-life balance right now, we will also tell you that there's nothing accidental about being in this space. We have made a choice to hustle this hard. Welcome to Success in Doses, the show that proves that success doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small, intentional doses. I am your host, Saleh. I am a pharmacist, mentor, mom, entrepreneur, navigating all of these and defining success on my own terms, and have decided to create a space where we can do that collectively. On this show, we serve up real talk, real conversations, difficult conversations that are thought-provoking to provide and help us all discover practical tools that can help propel us forward and help us take our daily doses towards our own version of success and what that means to each of us. Whether you're redefining success, rebuilding from a setback, or reaching to the next big thing, this is your space, and we are accomplishing things one dose at a time. On the show today, I am tackling something that is currently trending and has social media ablaze. There is a conversation currently taking place about work-life balance. And this kind of inspired me to record this episode where we get an opportunity to talk about hustle culture. What is hustle culture? And whether or not the founder and CEO of Great American and Skims, her comment this week, and I quote, "Work-life balance is your problem, and that is your responsibility to figure out." She explains that putting the burden on your employer or the companies you work for to figure out what work-life balance is or what work-life balance will mean for you, not only is it unrealistic, she straight up thinks this is a crazy concept and even says it in this podcast interview that one of the red flags that will have her walk away from a candidate is if that candidate asks about work-life balance. Before we get into Emma Greed and who she is, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about why this topic I think is timely, relevant, and important. For those of us that are in healthcare, June, July is residency season. Both medical and pharmacy residents are about to hit the hospitals. And these are going to be individuals with huge ambitions and huge aspirations for their careers. And they're going to be learning for the first time in their lives that sacrifice, grit, and resilience, both mental and physical, are some of the deal breakers that they were not prepared for, because everybody prepares for the intellectual burden of performing well on residency, but no one really talks about the fact that you're going to be taxed in things and in ways that don't necessarily have a category in your evaluation. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that before we get into Emma Greed and who she is. For people that are unfamiliar with postgraduate training that are listening to this, after medical students and pharmacy students have gone through 4 years of education, you graduate with a degree, you can choose to do a residency. In the case of pharmacists, it is a voluntary training. We are not obligated to complete residencies to be practicing pharmacists. But for physician, residency and securing a residency is a rather big deal and important step. And in pharmacy, securing a residency can completely change the trajectory of your career. And so many candidates and many students enter this next phase of their careers with a lot of excitement, a lot of pride, because they've had to beat out thousands, quite literally, to be the one to secure that spot. And so let's talk about the mental burden that already places on you to make sure that you perform well when you find yourself in that situation. It is incredibly difficult to not appreciate that you were one of hundreds. If you think about it on an even larger scale, where you're thinking about nationally, you were one of thousands of people who were interested in this position. And now that you are here, You place a responsibility on yourself already to make sure that you don't just do well, but that you are exceptionally well, which leads us to hustle and hustle culture and what this really means for productivity and what this really means for ambition, success, and how we will all get ahead. So for Emma Grede, I have been very familiar with who Emma Grede is because I am all things girl boss. I love how unapologetically bold she is in the way she shows up and the way she takes up space and her journey and how she has built a multi-million-dollar company from the ground up. And a lot of what people are reacting to on social media, first and foremost, is a minute and a half clip about where she goes into work-life balance. And she straight up says that that is not the employer's responsibility, it's yours. What I wanted to point out about this interview, she was on a podcast called The Diary of a CEO. I love this podcast and follow this podcast religiously because there are a lot of thought leaders and great CEOs that he secures for this podcast that share a lot of insight about how to make it. It's almost like a new age version of Guy Raz's How I Built This. These are two really great podcasts if you're an entrepreneur, if you're in leadership, or if you're just a person that needs help hearing from successful people about how their journeys were not linear either. These are great podcasts. So when I found out that Emma Grede had been on the podcast, it'd been on my list to check out. Mind you, this podcast was published like over a month ago on YouTube, and now clips are circulating about it. Emma Grede is a woman that is from East London that came from a single family home. She's the oldest of, I think, 4 siblings and has been incredibly transparent and talking about her journey from a very early age. She learned the importance of responsibility and the importance of getting it by any means necessary. And I think that if you don't know who she is, hearing the comments that she's made about work-life balance and hustle culture and ambition and all these things, it could be like a smack in the face, right? Because you could be like, these are toxic and dangerous rhetoric for founders and CEO to propel forward and to put out there because we care more about work-life balance. But you have to kind of understand people's background and people's history and their stories of how they've made it. And this is why I am so big on lived experiences, because we tend to kind of take people at like face value and not thinking more in depth about how people's opinions around topic, whether controversial or not, get formulated. And I think if you are a person who follows Emma Grede or who's followed her career from a social media marketing standpoint to Great American as a brand to partnering with the Kardashian in the creation of Skims, what she said is inflammatory to you if it's the first time you're hearing her speak and her say this. But this is not a new position for her. Those of us that follow her know that this is exactly what she thinks, and she lives by it, right? Because she talks a lot about, even earlier in her career, she loved being in proximity to her leadership at work because she would take these meticulous notes about what they said and what their visions and ideas were, and she would replicate those things. And these were incredibly successful for her in her professional career. The person interviewing Emma on this podcast pushes her a bit and asks her, like, just playing devil's advocate, the people that are going to hate you saying the work-life balance is not the employer's responsibility and hate it. What, to the point, the effect of like, what is your response to that? And she said, the people who are going to hate, right? I'm paraphrasing, but the people who are going to be upset and angered by her saying the work-life balance is not her as a founder or CEO's responsibility are people who don't have ambition, okay? are people who don't really have drive and a vision that is bigger than just paying bills and having a job per se, right? I'm paraphrasing. You should really go listen to the podcast because the podcast is like 2 hours plus, and we are having all these intense conversations about this comment off of a minute and a half clip. So I actually encourage all of you to go check out the podcast in its entirety because it could really reshape your mindset around what people are angry about and knowing that people are reacting to a reel instead of reacting to the totality of what she discussed on that podcast. And on this point, I'm just going to speak about what work-life balance in my personal career has looked like. Okay. I cannot claim that I have it. I cannot claim that I have been good at it. I can't. I still work through lunch, for example, something really easy, right? It's a habit I picked up through residency of working through lunch, working through being hungry. And to this day, when I can take lunch where nobody would even look for me if I went out to lunch to grab lunch, I still can't let go of it. Okay. But it is because of how fiercely competitive I am and how fiercely committed to my goals I am. I still work 7 days a week. On the weekends, I may carve out a few hours here and there to rest, but I am here in this room creating. I am in bed with the laptop looking at work stuff. What I'm saying in a nutshell is I agree with her in that the idea, the work-life balance, that her saying the work-life balance is your problem, that it will upset people who are not necessarily creating and having to build companies. I have to say that I kind of agree with that point, right? Because once I became my own version of a founder and creator, and I am now in a space where I am building a team around an entire brand and company, I don't have days off. I work all the time. Even if I am not working where I'm employed, I'm working for myself. I'm not glorifying it, but I'm saying that I agree with the point that when you are starting out and you are building something new, time off and time to disconnect and balancing it, having a young child, and no, I don't have it. I don't have it because all of my work, my energy is going into right now, making sure that the vision that I have comes to fruition. And I can see how far away I am still from making that vision come to life. And so it takes work, it takes commitment, it takes grit. It is nasty business, it is nasty work. And not being honest about that is problematic, but that's true. I have to say that that is true for anyone who's building things. You don't really have a good work-life balance. And that's because your ambitions are kind of leading the way and you are comfortable with that because what you are trying to do is so super clear in your mind. So that's the first point I wanted to make about that interview. Okay. The second point I wanted to make in the interview is that she also talked about how the amount of time, like when you look at companies, the people that are getting ahead and advancing and getting promoted and getting the bonuses and getting the recognition, they are working their butts off. Okay. They are not coming in and sticking to their job descriptions. They are venturing out into spaces that are nowhere near what their job descriptions are. They are staying much later than they are required, sometimes unpaid at that. They're coming in much earlier than required, also unnoticed because they're first there. So no one sees them come in and they leave last. Everyone is aware that they leave last because everyone leaves them there. But I can tell you because I've done this is I'm not checking for that. because I'm so focused on the fact that this bonus, this client acquisition, getting all these students to match, like I am so goal oriented and so focused on what I'm trying to accomplish that what other people are taking notice of and not taking notice of is the last thing on my mind. And the reward for that is that I secure the outcomes that I want. My chances of failing at those things are significantly lower because I've actually poured over them and invested my time and energy into them the way I wanted to and the way I meant to. So this is not accidental, right? Those of us that are honest in the fact that we're not really chasing work-life balance right now, we will also tell you that there's nothing accidental about being in this space. We have made a choice to hustle this hard. We have made a choice to work this hard, to make our time right now all about this, right? And so it is a choice. This CEO's company is not the only company out there. The same way that she's able to say that it's a red flag for anyone to ask about work-life balance that would make her walk away, you can also walk away. You can also walk away because if you are at that season in your life where being there for everything outside of life matters to you more than ascension at work, when it's time to go, it's time to go. You will do what is required of you to do to keep your job, but not an inch outside of that. And that's cool. That's cool. But what I am finding a little bit problematic is that the language and the reaction online that I have seen, it's that she should be ashamed of herself, is that she is promoting a toxic thing. If you've actually gone and taken the time to watch all 2 hours of this podcast interview, what you will learn is that Emma's not the way she is by accident. It's actually by design, right? It's because of all of her lived experiences and coming from where she comes from that she is the way she is. That's the first thing you're going to learn. And the second thing you're going to learn is she is explicit in this interview and has been forever since I first heard of her. She's explicit in articulating the fact that it's not for everybody. It's not. And I think in this interview, they like ask her if someone doesn't have grit, do you think you can teach them grit? Do you think you can teach them how to be more aggressive in their pursuit of success and stuff like that? And she discusses that. But reality is, like, it's not for everyone. If it were for everyone, we would all be the top 1%. We would. But it's not for everyone. So that's the other thing that I think needs to be incredibly clear in the discussion around these inflammatory comments that you're hearing about circulating online. Now, on the other end of this spectrum, as a person who is knee deep in the hustle culture right now, there are things that the hustle culture gets wrong, without a doubt. The hustle culture will have you believe that you just need to put 1,000,000 hours in and that's going to translate directly into success for you. That is not true. You have a mentor, you have a friend, you have anyone that's talking to you about success that way, you need to run because that's not true. And I think this is where perhaps some of that generational divide may come in because some generations, that's the only way they could have done it, by putting in 1,000 hours. But today, there are too many tools and too many things we have access to that makes the 10,000 hours a month ridiculous. So I don't have certain skills in creating a podcast. I can get on any of these platforms and hire somebody to do it for me. That gives me my time back, instead of having to feel like I need to invest 1,000,000 hours into learning how to do that because I must do it all myself. So hustle culture, I am in it. I'm buying into it. Absolutely. But I can recognize some of the things that hustle culture also gets wrong. And one of them is this, that We really, really, really have to pick a difference between being super busy and impactful because there really is a difference. And then the second myth is that you have to choose between ambition and your wellness. I don't agree with this. Like, and in my case, this is a straight up life and death situation. I don't have the luxury of having a health that is already impeccable, right? So I have a health that requires attention all the time. And there have been seasons in my life where I didn't prioritize the mental health component of my physical health, right? Thank God that we've come through that. But for me, my hustle and ambition will always be placed in the shadow of my well being, right? I hustle hard, but I know that the hard hustle is to a point. And when I know that I have reached that point, I don't just I don't see that as, oh, I just need to push past this. Oh, no. I need to take a beat. I need to take a minute, take care of myself so that I can resurface stronger and deal with the things that have fallen behind or fallen through the crack. So that's another myth that the hustle culture, I think, pushes that I want to warn you against and saying that absolutely not. Your health will always comes first. The third thing the hustle culture, I think, pushes is kind of like this idea that we cannot balance things, right? Like if you are balancing your hustle, then you're like having a luxurious hustle of a sort. This hasn't been my experience because of the industry I'm in. My hustle is seasonal. When it's residency application season, I absolutely don't have work-life balance. I'm completely consumed by the application volume, the application reviews. You add podcasting to that mix. There is no balance for me at that time. But once the match season is over, yeah, I try to balance. I pursue balance. I'm never completely shut off, but I do try to make intentional moves to a certain extent to make sure that I am reconnecting with my family and reconnecting my kid and doing things with my kid because that is the most guilt-ridden part of this entire situation and journey, right? My husband, he supports me. He's next to me. He is not behind me. He is next to me in this grind, right? To create the future that we both are so clear about. I don't worry about his understanding and position that I have to travel and I have to be up till 2, 3 in the morning working on things. I don't worry about that. But my son, I do because I am putting things on the line and sacrificing things that I'm never going to get back. His first steps were are never going to be his first steps again. The first time he says daddy and I missed that. I've missed it, even if he caught it on camera, right? And so when it is downtime and I'm engaging back in my family, best believe that I am doing that fully and nobody can make me feel guilty about taking that intentional step to do so. And so the thing with balance that I've learned is it's actually a survival skill. Learning how to go hard in the paint when I have to and how to say I'm going to come up for air has been the single most transformative thing I've learned to keeping me engaged long term and getting me long term success. And so when people say things like balance is being able to balance things is a luxury. It's not a luxury. I think it's a skill just like everything else and it takes a lot of self-awareness to understand it. But you have to have a lot of intentionality behind it. But in my experience, I work as hard as I do because I know that I already have budgeted the season and time to come up for air. And when I'm coming up for air and that time is harvesting season, baby, I am cultivating and reaping the benefits of all those long hours that I was putting in where 3, 4 hours a night was the best I could have ever done. And I was working around the clock, right? And so don't fall for that trap. Balance definitely does not equal luxury. So here's what I am unlearning as a person who is deep in the hustle culture. I used to believe that if I wasn't exhausted, like really, really, really exhausted, I wasn't doing enough. I really used to think that. And I really think that that is this really nasty thing I inherited during residency, right? And I wear my work ethic as a badge of honor. I've said this and I will say this to the day I die. I don't care. In a room of people that are 10 times more educated than me, 10 times more experienced than me, 10 times more better traveled, more cultured, 10 times more connected. In a room full of people like that, the one thing that I am certain of, without any doubt, is that nobody in that room can outwork me. Nobody. My commitment to working hard, and I mean really, really working hard and not having any boundaries to how far I would go to accomplish my goals, that's my superpower. That's my superpower. That's how I keep winning. It's not because I'm smarter, it's not because I know more, it's not because, but it is because I give myself to work and my goals in a way that I know other people just won't. And that will make me a winner consistently every single time. But it has come at a price, right? It has come at a price where I used to now, like when I come up for air for rest, I feel guilty, like I should be doing something. I should be doing something. But what I'm unlearning is that because I work hard, I should be budgeting and preparing to play 10 times as hard as I work. You understand what I'm saying to you? Because if I don't do that, I'm worried that resentment could build in to the success. And I don't want to get to the other side of accomplishing my goals, no matter how small they are, and feel like I've missed out on other tremendous opportunities simply because I didn't have the discipline to kind of see that it was time to really live in this moment and enjoy it. Right? So, unlearning that exhaustion is not a badge of honor. Exhaustion is nothing to celebrate, and exhaustion is nothing I should be chasing. But my hard work and that fierce competitiveness that I have that lives inside me needs to have phases and come in waves so that I can also remember to take care of myself. And so for this episode, I have 3 stat doses for you. And stat doses are just going to be my 3 quick hits that I just hope you get from each episode that you listen to. And the number 1 is rest is a strategy, not a setback. Don't feel guilty about carving out time where you really stop, decompress, and think about the wins, the losses, the detours, the actual failures, and figuring out how you need to recalibrate your plan so you can keep going. Rest can be an incredibly powerful tool as you work on figuring that out. The next stat dose I have for you is ambition. Ambition is only sustainable if you have clarity of purpose. I'm going to say it again. Ambition. It is only sustainable if you have clarity of purpose. Being ambitious because it's exciting, it's thrilling, you're going to fuzzle out. Like you're going to fizzle out, right? But having ambition that you have placed in the shadow of purpose, because the vision that you have about where you're headed and what you're trying to do is clear to you. You have clarity behind that. That is what is going to sustain your ambition, not burying yourself in 1,000 different things because you feel like you have something to prove to someone, so on and so forth. I'm telling you from experience, that's not sustainable. What's going to sustain you on your journey to accomplishing all of the things that you want, it's going to be that clarity of purpose and placing your ambition in the shadow of that. It's going to open doors for you in ways that you didn't even imagine possible. The last stat dose that I have for you is you don't have to prove your worth with exhaustion. And this is specifically to all of you starting residency this year. You do not need to prove your worth with exhaustion, like you are done, you are finished, you're tapped out. And you feel like unless that is visible, unless you are demonstrating that you are just bankrupt mentally, emotionally, physically, that people aren't going to recognize your worth. This is very dangerous business. I'm telling you right now, it's dangerous business because it is incredibly difficult to unlearn. And it's even worse because if you are in an environment where people are myopic about what you contribute and they are blind and choosing to be blind to what you bring and what you contribute and don't want to invest in you and furthering you and growing you, you're going to run yourself into the ground for no reason. Because to say it really bluntly, they're not checking for you. And so here are some key takeaways from this episode. Number one, I highly encourage you to go watch the entire podcast episode on Diaries of a CEO with Emma Greed, where she's talking about work-life balance. You're going to hear a lot of things that are going to trigger you, but I want to invite you to listen and hear what she is saying. Whether you agree with her or not, Black women like Emma Greed and what she's been able to accomplish is inspiring. It's remarkable. And as a young entrepreneur that is building, that is a founder, people like her have been excellent to see, just trailblaze the way she has. And that's why I follow her very closely, because I relate to some of what she's saying, being the oldest and not having the luxury of being able to have things just delivered, but that need to go out and get it and go hard in the paint every single time to secure the outcome you want, right? There are pieces you'll agree with and there are other pieces you won't agree with. But go check out that episode. I just think it's a really great podcast episode. And on YouTube, where it's a video episode, it's really great. It's a great episode to see. So that's the first thing. Key takeaway is that if you watch that, you may have some feelings about it. And then key takeaway number 2 is exhaustion is not a badge of honor I want for any of you. As residency kicks off, you need to take responsibility for your own physical, mental, and emotional health. Looking to institutions to have these things in place for you that protect you, that tell you you need to take a break and you will not be that lucky and that privileged in every program. So if you end up in a program where you feel like you have to define these boundaries for yourself, do it. Do it. And if you don't know how to do it, get at me. I'm happy to mentor you on how you can actively and professionally advocate for yourself to set some boundaries that make sure that you can show up and actually have something to contribute. Okay? And the third thing that I wanted to tell you, which is just about learning and defining what your ambitions are. I want you to manage your expectations. If you are a person like me that is in a season right now of building and creating, work-life balance is the last thing on my mind. I don't think about it. I don't worry about it. I do what I can. And when I can't, I cannot. I'm blessed to have the support to be able to invest in the things that I am building the way I am. But it's because I am headed somewhere. And this season is hard work season, is investment season. Right? So if you are listening and that's you right now, I want you to know that you're not by yourself. Hustle culture is getting a lot of negative feedback right now. But for me, people that are in hustle culture that can talk to me honestly about hustle culture and talk to me honestly about how I can make sure that I am succeeding in hustle culture. That's what I'm about, because nobody is going to convince me that not giving it 110% is how I'm going to get to the next level. I don't identify with that. I don't identify with that at all, right? Because that hasn't been my experience. In my experience, when I've worked the long hours and delivered and over-delivered on the project by putting in all of my work, time, and energy into those things, I've always had something to show for it. So I can identify with the other side at the moment. But that doesn't mean that the other side is not something that deserves what they're advocating for, right? The point being, work life balance is a very personal journey. And for some people, it matters. For others, it doesn't. Where I am right now, I am building, and I am not delusional to that state and thinking that I can actually have work life balance. And that's where I am. And that is all I have for you this morning on this episode of Success in Doses to get you started on your Monday morning. Let's have a real conversation in the comment. What is your take on work life balance? Does the company you work for have a responsibility to provide work life balance for you? Or is this something you need to take responsibility for and making sure that it exists in your life? Tell me in the comment. If what you heard on this episode resonated with you, or you think there's a conversation to be had, or you think that somebody else can benefit from hearing this episode, please like, comment, subscribe, and share this podcast with somebody so that we can grow and we can grow a community. Join me and join my subscription list at www.successandoses.com, where we can continue this conversation there as a community in a safe corner of the internet where we can all voice our opinions and stance on complex topics such as work-life balance and hustle culture. Until next time, please remember, success isn't something that's going to happen with giant leaps. Every single day, you should be making small intentional steps that all work in concert and together to getting you to your own definition of what success is and your destination of what you envision success to be for yourself. Until next time, please take care and take one step at a time towards success. Bye, everybody.